Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Rhiannon Hoyle, the Alberta NDP Advanced Education Critic and MLA for Edmonton South. I'm joined today by my fellow MLA, Edmonton Highlands Norwood, and our Alberta NDP Housing Critic, Janis Irwin. We are gathered on territory of Treaty 6, and I also want to recognize the Métis people who share a deep connection with this land. Most Alberta post-secondary students have already begun their fall semester this week, or will be today or tomorrow. This should be an exciting time for our future leaders as they gear up to learn the skills that they will need in their future careers and gain experience they will carry with them for the rest of their lives. Unfortunately, the vast majority of students I'm hearing from are deeply worried about the massive costs they're facing as classes begin. Let's start with tuition. Danielle Smith and the UCP promised to freeze tuition next year. This has left students facing a major tuition hike this year. In fact, the government's own financial projections show that Alberta post-secondary students stand to pay $104 million more in tuition collectively than they did last year. Now, I want to be clear that I believe our institutions do not bear the blame for these increases, but rather they come as a direct result of more than $700 million worth of UCP cuts to operating budgets of universities, colleges, and polytechnics. Those cuts have resulted in canceled programs, campus closures, staff layoffs, and steep tuition hikes on students during a period of a 40-year high inflation. Put simply, the cost of tuition has gone up, and the quality of education has likely gone down as schools grapple with these massive reductions. None of this is right, and it pains me to think of the students who may not enroll, all because they simply couldn't afford it. No other Canadian province has seen a tuition increase at the same rate as Alberta's over the past 4 years. Some students have faced 4 successive years of a 7% increase. This is literally thousands more dollars each year. We continue to call on the UCP government to implement the tuition freeze now and provide funding to offset any negative impacts to schools as a result of doing this so late in the game. The other massive issue I'm hearing about is the lack of affordable housing and the impacts of the overall housing crisis on students. For more on that, I will turn things over to Janis.
Thank you, Rhiannon, and I'm just so grateful for your advocacy and to be able to work alongside you here as we advocate for post-secondary students, our future leaders. The housing crisis is having a devastating effect on so many Albertans, and specifically on students, who I'm hearing from constantly, and Rhiannon is as well. And nowhere has rent increased in Canada more than in Calgary, and Edmonton here is not too far behind. These massive rent increases are forcing students to consider dire measures. There are reports of some students having to live in their cars while attending classes at the University of Calgary. Others here in Edmonton and elsewhere in Alberta have talked about couch surfing for months on end, about whether they could actually be homeless while pursuing their studies. This is simply unacceptable.
Thank you, Janis, for all the important work that you are doing during this unimaginable housing crisis. I am so grateful to be on a team with incredible MLAs like yourself. And I was so honored to be elected the Edmonton South MLA this past May. And after that, I specifically asked our leader, Rachel Notley, to be appointed Advanced Education Critic because I know how important post-secondary is for our future leaders and for our collective future as a province. Alberta students, you deserve better. We know the costs you're facing. We know some of you are considering withdrawing altogether because of all these pressures. We know that what is normally a very exciting time has been overwhelmed for so many of you by the stress of making ends meet. The Alberta NDP is here to advocate for you. We will be pushing to lower the cost of your tuition and fighting to ensure that every single one of you has a suitable place to live so you can focus on getting a good education and preparing for your future. Thank you, and we are happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you. Just a reminder, if you're on Zoom, it's the raise hand function. If you're on the phone, it's *9. Please state your name and outlet and who you'd like to direct your question to. We'll start on the phone with Catherine. Your line is open.
Federal government said it was considering a cap on international students as part of the strategy to address this housing crunch. And I'm wondering what impact you think that would have both on the universities themselves, on the students?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. At the end of the day here, students need support, and tuition is at an all-time high. We are in a crisis, so this is not something that's a nice to have, it is a need. And so at this point, as long as we can get some support for students, I think that's important. We need to make sure that everyone, all students, not just international students, are cared for. So at the end of the day, we do need the UCP government making sure that they put this freeze on tuition, and this will help all students.
Do you have a follow-up, Catherine?
And I guess on the 16th, on a Saturday, Calgary City Council is going to meet to discuss their housing strategy. What do you want to see come out of that?
Yeah, I'll let my colleague Janis speak to that.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. We are following with great interest what is happening with the City of Calgary. I've been clear in all the conversations I've had with the media and with stakeholders that we need a collaborative approach to the housing crisis. And so we're really happy to see the City of Calgary step up. We've seen the Fed step up and be willing to have these conversations, but we're missing the province in this equation. And so we're calling on the UCP to work collaboratively with us, with the municipalities and with the federal government to take serious action on the housing crisis and treat it like the crisis it is.
Thank you. We'll do another pass for questions. Just a reminder, if you're on Zoom, it's raise hand. If you're on the phone, it's *9. Seeing none, that concludes our press conference for today. Thank you.
Thank you.